Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well. Hope you're doing well this evening.
I'm doing fine. You know, we took a break last week.
Yeah, we're back and got a lot of things to talk about for sure.
For better or for worse?
For better or for worse, yeah.
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 Did you watch the Kraven the Hunter trailer?
I did. I finally got around. I saw the poster. Really liked the poster. And I finally did watch the trailer proper today, because I wanted it to be fresh of mind, for tonight. And, yeah, you know, I was actually pleasantly surprised that I didn't have the reaction of what the hell is this shit? It's a story of two trailers for me. On the one hand, it was like, oh, Aaron Taylor Johnson definitely like plays the part well, which I figured he would. And given that, you know, we have a Spider-Man adjacent character having another solo film in the Sony Marvel universe, you know, that's their thing. And, you know, so I was like, okay, cool. But where I was just like, where are they going with this was the, how Kraven got it looks like how Kraven got his powers. Because if I recall, I was like, wait a minute, Kraven, did they like do a Spider-Man like type of Kraven getting his powers with the drop of blood here? Cause I mean, that's not how he, if I recall, I don't know Kraven that well, but I do know that he did not get his powers from a lion.
Right.
Yeah. So that was where I was just like, you kind of, you know, and I know you don't have to necessarily do a 1-to-1 adaptation and all.
No.
And you can take liberties, but that one was just kind of like, all right, really? Y'all gonna give him the Spider-Man type of introduction? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. The trailer didn't bother me too much. The only thing that consistently runs through my mind during a trailer like this is, oh great, it's the anti-hero. So is he good or is he bad?
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, I was thinking that aspect of it too. Yeah.
Yeah. It just, we've had a few of these. None of them have done particularly well at the box office or with critics, so I don't expect a lot from this movie. I don't even know if I'm going to see it. I didn't see Morbius. I'm not seeing, like, I haven't seen either one of the Venom movies, so I doubt I will. But yeah, I do feel like I watched the movie though through that trailer, so I saw the first, second, and probably a part of the third act.
Yeah, exactly.
And guess what? The spoiler alert, by the end of it, you still don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy. You still don't know.
Yeah, we do get Rhino in it and stuff too. So, I mean, the Red Band trailer, it's a rated R film, and, you know, which I know I think the Venom films were rated R also.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I said, it has potential, but you're right. I mean, clearly outside of the Spider-Verse, I really haven't really been drawn to any of the Sony Marvel films. Let me correct that. Haven't been drawn to the recent Sony Marvel films, I should say. Yeah.
The ones where Kevin Feige is not really involved at all, and it's noticeable. All right. On a down, well, since we're talking Marvel, people, I don't think are going to be surprised by this at all, but Marvel Studios will have a much smaller footprint at San Diego Comic-Con. Cool.
Yeah. So they're skipping Hall H this year.
They've done that multiple years though.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they had the big return, I guess, was it last year.
They do a weird thing, like every other year they'll do it.
Yeah.
And then they'll, I think Kevin Feige has gotten so much glee from the reaction of when it's like, a surprise or a fan event, and then he just announces things during that. Like he doesn't have to have the convention. So
Right.
I don't
Right.
know. It makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. Because of the writer's strike and potential Screen Actor Guild strike, it doesn't make, it's not surprising that they're not going to be at the event, because really most things are kind of stalled in production now. And it's also, just from a, not being a particularly good or bad, good look, showing up while there's people as work stoppages and celebrating, these properties right now. I mean, it's really, there's really no news at this point for really, or big things to unveil or any footage to really unveil, because a lot of things are on hold right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Something that is no longer on hold, well, kind of, sort of. Well, we do know that Superman and Lois will return for a 4th season.
Yep.
But simultaneously, word got out that part of the reason why they've been renewed is because they're undergoing drastic budget cuts, which mean majority of the cast have been either reduced to guest starring roles or removed from the cast completely. Yeah.
I mean, that news broke last week while we were on break. And, I definitely, whenever we first saw the news, I guess it was like a 1-2 drop. So we got the drop of the series being renewed, which was great news. But then the devil and the details started to come out, like, oh yeah, like as you noted, the budget cuts. And then the next day, was when it was confirmed. Well, I think that actually the day they were renewed, I think, Dylan Walsh, who plays General Lang, his wife posted on Instagram that he was not coming back due to the budget cuts. And then, after, I guess the next day was when the official word came down that, there was indeed going to be, reductions, from regular status to guest star status. And really, it's up to, I guess, story and the actors' availability as far as, whether or not they'll come back as guest stars or not. I know Eric Valdez, who plays Cal Cushing, has said that he is planning on doing some guest spots, and also the actress who plays Sarah, Indy Navarrete. I think she's also been rumored to come back, but beyond that, the other, I guess, regulars who have been on the show the first 3 seasons, no official word has come back out. Other than I know the actor who plays, John Henry did post on Instagram, like, looking for work. So, I mean, that could be taken as a sign that he's, moving on. But it did make as a regular, Michael Cudlitz, who, is playing Lex. So they did drop a lot of folks, but they did add him, as a regular for the 4th season, which, given, where things are headed with this season, at the end of this season, makes sense, because it looks like that's going to be the focus of the 4th season.
How many episodes are remaining? Is it just 2 or 3?
The penultimate was this past, Tuesday night, and the finale is next Tuesday.
Okay, good.
Yep.
They're doing a weird thing, because I feel like not last week, but the week before, it was pretty much the finale. And now we're getting a little, like, teaser for the 4th season, and interesting. I wonder if any of them are going to die. I had a really dark thought the other night, like I mainly do, and I was just like, kill kill one of the boys, you had you gave us this idea that Lois would die of cancer this season. So a boy has to go. One of the sons.
Yeah, one of the sons. Or leave us in a cliffhanger with, like, one of the boys in jeopardy with Lex. Cause I mean, Yeah.
Don't do
Yeah.
that. Don't do that. It's going to be another 5 years before we see the fourth season at this rate. So.
Yeah. But when it does return, in addition to the budget cuts, they also did an episode count, so it's only going to be 10 episodes next season. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. And the last piece of news leads us into our main topic, or one of our main topics, which is The Flash, which we both watched. That the director, Andy Muschietti, is set to direct Batman, the Brave and the Bold. I feel like we already knew that.
Well, it was rumored, and I think he kind of let the cat out of the bag early before it was officially announced, and then James Gunn confirmed it last week. So that was another one of those things that dropped last week on the heels of the Flash release.
So since we've both seen The Flash, what are your thoughts about him directing Batman, the Brave and the Bold?
I think I like this direction of the Flash. I mean, I know getting into the film, we'll get into deeper discussion about it. I like the film. I told you that before. I'm still like the film. I think assuming that James Gunn doesn't cut him or the studio Warner Brothers proper doesn't force James to cut him because of let's just face it, the underperformance, basically a flop that the Flash is having at the box office. I think he'll be okay, doing this film.
Glowing review. He's going to be okay.
No, I think it'll be, I think he'll direct a good film. I mean, a lot of it's kind of like where, the Brave and the Bold will introduce the Bat family and stuff. I haven't read hardly any of the comics. That will be the source material. So I can't really speak to the tone of those books. So.
But you don't, at the end of the day, you don't know. Like, you liked what he recently put out there.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, we'll see if he can do some, like, one up this thing.
Yeah.
The Flash. Man, I'm having trouble with words today. I'm sorry, everyone. I am more hesitant about this, and not hesitant. Hesitant isn't the right word, because we all know that these directors, they direct a really weird movie or a really lame movie, and then they direct like an Oscar award winning film, and you're like, this is the same person.
Yep.
So sure. I have a lot of issues with The Flash, and majority of my issues have to do with the directing. I don't think it was directed well. I have a lot of issues with a lot of the choices, and he can say that it was a choice and it was supposed to be like that. And it's like, okay, but I can still not like it.
Yeah.
Art house films criticized all the time for being like up their own ass, and people will say, this is stupid, this like lame, and it was an artistic choice. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that I have to like it. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Well, I would, my response to that would be, he's why I think he actually will be a good director, for this moving forward is he had the unenviable task of basically taking three different visions and trying to make it into a cohesive whole. And regardless of all, of some of the story points and other issues with that film, I personally was very entertained by it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so, and given the challenges of, we've been talking, since you and I have been doing this podcast together since 2017, we've been talking about the Flash movie and all that. So it's been around as long as you and I have been podcasting together. And it actually was released, I think it was first announced in 2015. So so to pull all that together and to put, and to at least for me, put together an entertaining film.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying it's perfect by any means, but it was entertaining, at least for me. And
Right.
so I think he has the vision, and if he can see a project from its inception, from and really put his own personal print on it instead of taking three different visions and having to mold his, integrate his vision as well, then, I think he's up to the task.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not saying that he's not, and you're right. Like, in this case, fingers crossed, we are talking DC. They go through directors a lot. So we'll see if he's actually able to hold on to this one and see it through to the finish line. Mm-hmm. And then we can judge it. But at the same time, I keep thinking about how it makes perfect sense, your opinions about The Flash versus my opinions about The Flash. And I'm not just talking like nostalgic aside, because you've been obsessed with this character for a lot longer than I have. Mm-hmm. Now, moving that aside, I keep on thinking about our difference of opinions regarding two other MCU movies. The first one being Ant-Man Quantumania, and the second one being Thor. Like, for some reason, both of those movies that are by no means a great comic book movie, like, you walked away from Quantumania being like, yeah, it was a good popcorn movie film. Me, I was like, I hated it. I couldn't, like, it was horrible. Yeah. The writing drove me absolutely mad. And I walked out of the theater being like, I would put The Flash at the same table as Quantumania. It just bothers me. And granted, the writing didn't necessarily bother me that much. It was more the directing, art choices, the CGI, of course, which is, I'll bring that up in a moment. But the Thor, you had a lot more issues with Thor, Love and Thunder. And me, I walked away being like, I laughed.
Yeah.
Great fun with it. I didn't care. It was stupid.
Yeah. I was also thinking about, you're right. Yeah. And in another movie, and then the Multiverse of Madness is Doctor Strange too. I was trying to think, like,
I feel like at the end of the day with that one, we're both kind of at the same, we kind of, I think, had overall at the same level of either like or hate with that movie. Yeah. But the two other, those conversations just came to my mind in terms of talking about this movie and why we have very different perspectives on it, because but
I will say I like the Flash a whole hell of a lot better than I like Ant-Man. No question.
Well, I mean, you have a bias.
No, and it's not even being a DC apologist. I mean, I just think it was, as far as story-wise and stuff, it was a better film.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm sorry. Okay. Like, I already preempted this. Will has been a fan of this character far longer than I have. And yet, I'm tired of watching any version of Barry Allen continue to repeat the same mistake over and over and over again. I'm just tired.
Now, and I will agree with you there. I do think, I think even from our show account, I'll take editorial credit on this one. I did say that it might be time to, like, let the Flash, just put him on the shelf for a little while, but in live action, animated, whatever, because I agree with you there that I do think there is, between the Arrowverse and the Snyderverse, and just how polarized people are about both. It's just, and also just, I mean, it's been a long run. I mean, when you think about it, with this character going back to 2014 live action. Yeah, let it, maybe not let it sit as long as it did between John Wesley Shipp and Grant Gustin, but at the same time, maybe just, let phase one of the new DCU, unfold, and then maybe in phase 2 or 3, that's when, bring the character back.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe.
And maybe not do Barry, but actually next time bring Wally, or properly bring Wally West, which I think, there were elements of Ezra Miller's portrayal of Barry that had some of Wally's early tendencies as far as the annoying aspects of Wally's personality, but just truly bring Wally West, or Jess Chambers, or somebody else, or Bart Allen, as the Flash in the next time he's appears live action.
Yeah. Yeah. Or just tell a different story,
Yeah.
or make it more compelling. There's so many things. I mean, we're talking about a comic book, a superhero genre where these characters, like, you take them out, you play with them, somebody screws up, somebody else tells a better story. It is what, yeah. Share more of your thoughts.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, let's just, I know you put a pin on the CGI. And I don't want to spend,
talk about that. We can talk about anything.
Yeah. Well, let's just go ahead and put it out there. I mean, it's definitely been a topic of conversation. It didn't bother me really. I see, because first of all, I should say I went into this film honestly with very low expectations, to be honest. I thought that, all the critic love that was coming out of CinemaCon was just like hyperbole. And, it was just like, you hear that stuff. And then when James Gunn was like, this is the greatest comic film ever, I was like, oh boy. I was setting myself up for like, this is going to be bad. Whatever. But, and he's doing what he's, I was like, okay, he's doing what he's supposed to do as head of a studio, be a great cheerleader. So I went into this film I went into it expecting not to like it, to be honest. And from the opening moment of the baby shower, I was like, okay, I see what they're doing here. And yes, the CGI was wonky. The babies were very creepy. I mean, I can't, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, oh, it's amazing or whatever. It was creepy. But at the same time, I liked what they were trying to convey as far as setting the tone of the film and of the character, at least in this iteration of the character. And so when I let myself just watch it for what it is, I was like, oh, I like the things they were doing there. He's like low blood sugar, and he needs to power up and all those things like that. And I was just like, okay, yeah, and we're seeing things from his perspective. So of course I did buy into the, like, okay, if I'm moving at super speed, things may, would be distorted. So, so I took that. I was like, okay, cool. The later aspect of the film, in the third act, and I will say this is where the film did fall down a bit for me, was that third act. When we are in the Corona Ball, and I did not have, if they were trying to evoke nostalgia or good feelings or anything from me whenever it was in the Chrono Ball, and we have all the various Supermans coming up. I mean, I did find it pretty cool with the Nick Cage, one, just because of, of course, the history there with him and, his attempt to play Superman in the 90s that didn't get off the ground, even though they did have screen tests and all and shots and stuff. And I did like the little glimpse of Jay Garrick's Flash. The other ones just, they did, and I will say it did like, when I saw the Adam West and saw George Reed, I did like the George Reed one. That one didn't bother me as much as the Christopher Reeve one did. That one I just felt like, okay. I was like, nah, that one. It's like, nah, that one's not working for me. But, as far as the CG, and that's all, and that's it for what I have to say about the CG. But the story aspect of the third act, I did feel like it was rushed. I felt like the Dark Flash being Barry, I couldn't help but think back to Savitar with the third season of The Flash.
Yep.
And I did think that, I was like, in that version of Flashpoint, actually the Arrowverse did it better with their version of the dark Barry Allen. And because I didn't feel like the third act it felt rushed and kind of shoehorned in, and this is where you had the competing visions of, I think, throughout the development of this film, where I felt like it wasn't cooked as well as it could have been.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there anything that you thought the movie did better than the Arrowverse?
So as far as the sort of the concept of Flashpoint overall, other than what I just mentioned about Savitar, I did like the way that, as far as the live action iterations of the story, I did like it the way they having the two Barrys.
Mm-hmm.
That really, despite Ezra Miller's issues, I have to say they gave a hell of a performance. And honestly, I will say that, they did such a great job of it, to the point where I was just like, I was able to really separate the artist from some of the issues, because of the strength of how they constructed the story and how they portrayed both Barry Allens in the film, and to the point where I was just like, oh, this is some pretty masterful work, pretty solid work that Ezra's doing here, with the character.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
I just
did like
wonder
that.
if because I mean, to play devil's advocate, if he did such a good job in the movie, then playing both versions of Barry, and I wonder why not just you but others have that criticism about the third act being rushed, because if he was doing such a good job, then it shouldn't have felt rushed from a character perspective.
Right.
No, that makes sense how he would end up there, and like this turn isn't coming out of left field, because it didn't, to me, come out of left field. I have other issues with the third act, but yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't his portrayal. I mean, that to me, that was where it was just a failure of the story. Not Ezra's portrayal of Barry. I mean, because even in that third act, whenever young Barry, sacrifices himself to keep, I guess, Dark Flash Barry from, killing, our prime Barry. That was not a fault of the actor there. That was a fault of the story not was not an earned moment. And that's where I felt where it felt faltered.
Interesting. In terms of my opinion about Ezra's performance, I think he did fine. I don't think it was, okay, how do I explain this? So it goes back to the CGI thing. I find it astonishing how a movie with so many sequences of CGI that is horrible, pretty much they hired the same team that they did for Quantum Medium. I swear to God. And yet having him doing the double shot was seamless. How does that happen? How in the same movie can you have like a really good special effect to the point where a viewer is sitting there and just being like, man, so he has a twin in real life. like, I don't know. Like it that didn't bother me at all. It was really weird. And yet anytime, I'm not just talking the baby shower, I'm talking anytime, any sequence where CGI was used, especially that involved action, I was like, what the fuck is this? Who painted this? Because that's clearly a set. That's a set. This is all fake. What the fuck? Sorry, I'm really cursing tonight, but my other thing is like, I'm just gonna say he did fine, or they did fine, because at the end of the day, I didn't get annoyed with young Barry. I got bored with both Barrys. I got so bored where by the second act, I'm like, oh, so we just agreed to sit through pretty much a 2.5 hour of an Ezra Miller one-man show. Got it. Okay. I mean, there's like part of my issues with this is they have a good supporting cast, very minimally used.
Yeah.
In a good way. It's a really weird way where there's a lot of just Barry talking to Barry. It's like, wow, this is kind of boring.
Yeah. I will agree with you there. I mean, they definitely did not do Supergirl any favors in this film.
You saw everything she did in the trailers. I mean, she did a good job, but I've seen it all in the trailer. It's so stupid to me.
Yeah. And, you know, and I did like Keaton, his return, and I did like Ben Affleck, even though it was very short and all, but I thought Affleck definitely utilized him very well in as far as a supporting character and really setting up the sort of narrative arc of the story. And then Keaton's return. But again, but to your point about seeing everything, with, Supergirl in the trailers, I felt that way about Keaton.
Yeah.
Except for the long hair. Yeah. Except for the kitchen scene. Yeah.
Pretty much all of the supporting cast members, you saw in the trailer what they did. And then you're watching the movie, and the things that they didn't show was the 2.5 hour monologue. They're talking as, it was astonishing to me how, like, I'm not saying that this is the worst thing I've ever seen. But I'm also just astonished by how the movie has like these glimmers for me, from my perspective, glimmers of like, oh, that's a good piece of writing. I love the Back to the Future thing. Like, I thought that was so clever.
That was.
Clever. But then there's other stuff that I can't remember because I forget anything I don't like. That I'm like, this is the same writer. Like, but to your point, it's gone through how many different hands, so I don't know who the writer is at this point, like 1,000 different people. But it's just like there's so many glimmers of, oh, this is go somewhere, and then it doesn't for me. And man, like at the third act, like the Corona ball, I thought it was creepy at the beginning when he was first traveling back and you started to see like what felt like cardboard cutouts of different people, but it's not, it was a really bizarre choice because it was the same cardboard cutout just spinning around him, and I'm like, oh my God, what are we watching right now?
Yeah.
And I felt bad because my older brother went with me, my parents went with me, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. My mom actually kind of liked it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, go, Mom Belmont, because she and I should talk.
I said kinda. Okay. She didn't go out there like the huge. She just told me it was better than when apparently I went with her to see Aquaman. Okay.
Okay. Fair enough.
Because she understood what was going on. Because at the end of the day, it's a pretty straightforward,
It is.
pun intended, story. The one confusing thing, and we have to talk about this because it's a time travel movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so we all see the spaghetti scene and get explained that spaghetti breaks. Just like time breaks when you make a change. So you make a new world. And so the world that we spend majority of the time in throughout the movie with Keaton Batman ends up being hopeless because of how it was formed through Barry's choice to, okay. So then by placing the tomatoes on the top shelf, he's able to save his dad in his own timeline.
So with the spaghetti changes that you do impact, so I think it's different from the MCU branches, like we saw in Loki.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So basically, I guess, you don't, by doing the branch, by doing the spaghetti, you never like break any things, just kind of loop on top of each other. So nothing ever, there's never like a break, so to speak, like we've seen in the MCU or other iterations of time travel in media. Cause I think the thing that Keaton, that Bruce tells Barry, things flow both forward and backwards, and then you just have these little focal points of events. So basically,
yes,
what's that?
my explanation was correct.
Yep. So just making sure so by basically Barry putting the tomato can back, putting it on top instead of the bottom. Yeah. So the thing on the back end was, mom still dies. Dad now just looks up. And so now dad, after he'll still serve 17 years in prison, but the difference is instead of looking down like he did before and the video doesn't free him, now he looks up. But the thing is, the changes on the front end, the front side of it is now, instead of whenever Barry returned, this new line and this new part of the string, there's still, there's going to be other types of changes that will still happen.
Yeah, like George Clooney is now Batman.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. I know it's not the MCU, and I do like the spaghetti analogy to the extent that where I could have sworn he broke a piece while explaining it.
He did.
So to me, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It just.
I think that. I think I think the dried spaghetti. That to me is like that's the Back to the Future rules as far as like time travel with the dry spaghetti. But in the Flash, it was the boiled spaghetti that when he's using the analogy that's that universe's version of time travel. And that's the rules that we are playing by in this film instead of the uncooked spaghetti.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
I
that's
don't
just, that's
like,
just,
I don't like those
that's how I
rules.
took it.
I just don't like those rules. They don't compute for me logically. Um, and they just make it very confusing. So thank God this universe
I
is.
mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's just basically, yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, it's like, yeah, at the end of the day, it's just basically the spaghetti analogy, basically just is time is fluid, and there's just certain focal points that are like, I guess, like to use the across the Spider-Verse term, canonical canonical events that, like in this case, Barry's mother has to die,
Right,
regardless of wherever the intersections of spaghetti happen. That is
right.
that, yeah.
We
But
got
then
that
the
right.
things Yeah, but then the things around it are fluid. Yeah,
Yeah, not everything around it's fluid. I mean, in every universe, I see Barry Allen. He's always a fuck up.
yeah,
Really
and that was the other thing too.
so stupid.
Yeah, that was another thing too. Is probably he has a screw up for sure about when it comes to time, because that was the other thing that I did have. When I did think about it, I was like, so we just spent 2.5 hours, with this character, and we get that. I will say that was the moment in the grocery store when he does say goodbye to his mother. I mean, that was a very effective moment for me.
My dad ruined that moment for me completely. It was not effective at all when you have a 7-year-old man lean across my mom who's sitting next to me and says, shouldn't this be a Father's Day movie? Like, what is this, Mother's Day? Okay, calm down. Calm down. He saves his dad. Pay attention.
Yes,
Oh.
exactly. So it is a Father's Day movie. Exactly. Yeah, he saved his dad. He got his dad out of jail after all these years.
But we
Uh,
didn't see the dad at the end, like in a way. We didn't see like their reunion, so I don't know. It was very, very strange.
yeah.
Again,
It was
things
it
you
was in
like,
it was in one of the three cuts.
probably one of
Yeah.
the
Oh,
400 cuts.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Um, yeah, but I did like that moment, but, where I was going with that, was that did Barry really learn his lesson?
nope, nope.
After we spent all this time, because I'm just like, that was the thing. I was like, wait a minute. At the end of the day, he did the same thing. It just didn't have universes colliding into each other.
Well, you will never know like what ultimate damage he did. Um,
Right.
so and what path like that set him on.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but really the takeaway from the movie is Barry still didn't learn because he did like I get it. You can't it's hard not to let him save at least one of them.
Hmm.
But at the same time, for me, I wasn't emotionally invested in the relationship between his dad and him. I mean, it's a difficult task.
Yeah.
Like, because you got two parents and you need to set up like the emotional for both of them. And the focus is always going to be like focused on Barry and Nora just because like she's the reason he goes back. But in order for like that ending to really work for a lot of viewers, I think you have to build more of a connection between him and his
Yeah.
dad and
Oh yeah.
or just them
I agree.
as a unit.
Yeah.
Again, it's really hard in this movie when I don't know how many scenes are just Barry talking Barry. Nobody else. It's
Yeah.
just
Well,
Barry talking to
yeah.
Barry.
Yeah. And also too, to your point, especially for a lot of viewers of the film who also saw that father-son relationship that was just so well developed in the Arrowverse
Yeah.
between Barry and Henry.
So
And
like
then, and you don't get that in this, you don't get that in this iteration of the character. So yeah, those stakes and that emotional, you don't have those same emotional stakes that, that will make certain story elements work for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just, they had the pieces. They had a lot of the pieces because again, like the supporting cast is really good.
Yeah.
They're given 5 minutes. They're just given so little that, and this story is very complex. And they put it together. I feel like they put it together with duct tape and they put it out there and nobody saw it. My theater was like dead.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. We saw it on a Sunday night and there was like a handful of folks and yeah, I mean, there's just so many, I mean, again, there'll be a lot of thought pieces and, there's a lot of commentary out there already about why did the movie flop. And I think, there's not just, I don't think there's just not one thing. I mean, I think there's a multitude of factors that went into it. One,
Absolutely. Like there's, you're right. It's not just one reason in particular. There's a lot of things. I think like 3 weeks ago, I stopped seeing trailers for this movie. Like outside of Across the Spider-Verse, I saw the trailer, but then like, I don't feel like I was being bombarded with this trailer to the point where I'm like, when does that movie come out again?
Right.
I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
So I think advertising and marketing, because of everything going on with Ezra, they kind of didn't do the. I think it would have made more money. Had the whole thing with Ezra not happened, but also had it been released last year.
Yeah. I think, it's definitely, you're right. I think it's definitely a sense of timing. Because if they had released it last year, we wouldn't have gotten the George Clooney ending. We would have gotten, cause they didn't film that until January. And so, and so we would have gotten either, I think the CinemaCon ending, I think they had they just show up. I think Bruce shows up and he just steps out of the car. And then of course we also seen the set photos of Keaton's Bruce Wayne and Sasha Calle, Supergirl. That was the other ending that I think was also, filmed, but I guess when again, when Zaslav and that all bought Warner Brothers and made the cuts to Batgirl and all that, that pretty much put that on the cutting room floor. And I know Hamada, I guess the version where Barry, I lose track, but one of the three versions, not the George Clooney version, but one of the other two versions would have led into Crisis I think that's where Hamada was going. And that was, whenever with the whole DC fandom, I mean, that was the big thing about it when they had I think it was either the first or second fandom, when they announced this film, Hamada was talking about this is going to reset things and lead us into Crisis. So, yeah. So again, I mean, this film has had there's a multitude of reasons, of course. There's no goodwill at all. I mean, you're Exhibit A as far as how people feel about the DCEU.
I go and I watch, and I'll be perfectly honest, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
It's not for me.
Yeah, and they just never did build up that benefit of the doubt that Marvel has. That Marvel, it's been well chronicled. How slowly they built things up and really got audience buy-in with all these characters. They, DC just like, oh, we're just going to throw it all together and all, but there's no goodwill and there's no, there's no margin for error, whereas Marvel has that because of all the goodwill that they've built up over the years because of, that may slip, this Marvel movie or project TV show didn't work for me, but I know the next one probably will.
Yeah. On that note, do you want to talk about Secret Invasion?
Yeah, let's move over to Secret Invasion.
Okay, so I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I was so confused when everybody started talking about the AI generated opening.
I was like, what the? I was too. I was like, really? Okay. I was too. I was like, what's the big deal? Honestly.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, like what's the big deal? And also, I for some reason kept reading it and interpreted as like, oh, that opening fight sequence. And it's like, no, it's the opening credits. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, hey, I don't pay attention to those. I mean, if your name isn't Game of Thrones, I do not pay attention to your opening credits. I don't care.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I get from the larger philosophical, look, because we do have a writer's strike and AI issues are very front and center, um, in the negotiations that the creatives and the studios are having. I get it from that standpoint of just wanting to make sure there are appropriate guardrails and, proper credit and rules are in place as far as how you use it. I mean, we're talking about AI. I mean, hell, it's used all the time. I mean, and in my personal view of it, it's a tool. I mean, I've played around with ChatGPT and Bard and all those things, and even some other visual things. It's a tool. And even the Method Studios even came out and they're like, look, nobody lost your job. We just used it as a tool to help us create this thing. So it was also the merits of the show itself.
Yeah, you cut off out there a little bit for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard it come back in. Uh,
Um, yeah, so I think we're not going to talk about the AI
no,
controversy because I don't think either one of us really cares about it.
yeah.
Overall, I thought this was a fine fine first episode. There's going to be 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the ending was really solid and is kind of what I was waiting for the entire time. Because they
Mm-hmm.
had to do a lot of setup, and it just left
Yeah.
me with a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like Fury. They make it a big deal that Fury is now on Earth throughout the
Mm-hmm.
entire episode, right?
Right.
Yet, yet he came like to Earth real quick, where I thought we were gonna get a scene where somebody was gonna call him, or Agent Hill was gonna call him, and then he was gonna come down. But all of a sudden, he just walks in, and I'm like, whoa, what? Were you already here?
Yeah.
Were you
Yeah.
like, what is happening? Um, but and then also like the question of like, well, why did the blip have such a big effect on him? Why did it screw him up so much and not Maria Hill? Who is she referring to in that chess scene? I forget the exact line, but it's something about like, are you wanting to make it up to Talos, or are you talking about that other person? Who potentially could be Tony. I don't know. Um, but they present us with a Nick Fury who is a character we know, we've seen a lot of, and yet this
Mm-hmm.
version of him, like, I'm kind of looking at the show and watching him, and like, who are you? How
Yeah. Yeah.
did we get here? Um, but I think that's necessary because that gives you some mystery, some like
Mm-hmm.
intrigue about someone who you feel like you do know, but there's a gap now. And so they needed to set up some of those. Okay, we're going to fill in this gap, since we're
Mm-hmm.
starting to raise these questions. And it is a show about paranoia.
Yeah.
And so I think that all makes sense. And the cinematography reminds me so much of Andor and Falcon Winter Soldier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I got those. I was definitely getting those vibes. And yeah, everything from the cinematography to the title cards with, whenever they were in different places, that was definitely Falcon and Winter Soldier, and also, Black Widow as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which were also, and, I messaged just to you last night. I liked it because I also felt very grounded. Yeah. You do have all these aliens and stuff running around who are with the Skrulls, but Marvel does whenever they get back to their roots, it was very like phase 3 as far as some of the, storytelling that we got there with the more grounded stories like with Winter Soldier,
That was phase
and
2.
Civil War. Yes. I guess Winter Soldier was 2, but Civil War was phase 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But the more, but really those grounded stories, I think, they always excel in. And so to answer your thing about Nick Fury, I think it's a combination of one, he's, the blip really had, I think, he's a spy master, and he's always been one step ahead of his opponent. And it seems, it seemed that he is just coming to grips with like, I was blipped, and so maybe some PTSD or, or something where he's just kind of grappling with that, being that removed from the chessboard and all. But two, I also think it's a combination of him probably, like I think about when he got taken by, Sonya Falsworth, henchman, trying to play, yeah, he's lost a step, but he's still, Nick Fury losing a step is still, he's still 2 steps ahead of many other adversaries. And so like you said, I let you catch me because, at the end, I wanted to bug your office. So he's, so I think some of it is part act as well. And some of the things that he's doing. So that was where I was really looking at him as far as like where he is, but also, the blip has left him vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to know why. Why did it affect him in that way and others not? I mean, Maria Hill is also a master spy agent, and yet she got blipped. And she didn't seem to have those scars the way he did.
Nick was like, Nick was, yeah, but he's been kind of, but he was like, he's always been kind of center show, but since post Endgame, he's been kind of, he's not the of the whole, cause he set up the, like even in the show, he's like, look, my midlife crisis, I got the Avengers, he was talking to Talos. So, so I think he's just trying to find his place in this post-blip world because the whole geopolitical structure has changed, and, and it's sort of picking up on things that we saw in Falcon and Winter Soldier. The Skrulls are much like the antagonists that were in at least the Splinter Skrulls, and Skrullos are like the people that we saw in Falcon and Winter Soldier, where they're
very much so. Yeah. It's funny, the final scene. I like the choice to kill Maria Hill. Not because I don't like the character. I love the character. I just thought it was a very surprising moment. And it took me listening to a review from Kind of Funny where they pointed out, which I thought, like, I was like, there's a reason why I like that. And that you just answered why I liked it. But it's because you start the episode with Ross and thinking like, he's a Skrull. We know he's a Skrull. And then it turns and he's a Skrull. He dies. And then you end it. And you're like, for a moment, when she's first shot, you're like, oh, she's a Skrull. No, No. And then,
Right.
and the fact that it was Garvik wearing Nick's face and doing that, and then that moment where Nick sees and rushes over to her and says, "This is my face, like it wasn't me." And it's just, it's very sad, knowing how close they were. I didn't like how Nick just left her dead body when all the chaos was going on. And I also was wondering, a bomb just exploded 10 minutes ago, and yet nobody is going to stampede over her. like there's so much running around, but that's a dead lady, we're just gonna run around her. This is a very weird thing. But they also pointed out something I didn't pick up on. But earlier throughout the episode, there are these people that Nick Fury sees, and Garvik ends up wearing all three of those faces as he's leading Nick to where he wants him to be when the bomb goes south.
Yeah.
So they're doing very clever things in a subtle way. Which is always appreciative, especially when people are kind enough to rewatch things twice and then tell me what I should take away from them. I really like that. But yeah, I thought it was I'm not blown away by this in any means. I mean, for a while there, I was thinking, I'm like, man, this cast is old. We got the old Avengers going on.
The cherry actor.
I like him. And then they sprinkle in Emilia Clarke and the actor, I'm blanking on his name, who plays Garvik, but I know he's from Bridgerton season 1. And I think this is a good start. I hope it gets better. But that is a tough ending to one up within the next 5 episodes, because that's a really good ending of an episode.
Yeah, that ending was, and you know, and they did play, whenever she was shot, it was a startling moment too, and especially when she didn't change to a Skrull. But then I'm like thinking too, she went in No Way Home, I believe she would, Hill was masquerading as a Skrull, and so was Talos' Nick. It was, Soren, Talos' wife was using Hill as a,
Yep.
Yeah. So they played that card before, but it definitely, we always talk about stakes, and having a major character go like that, especially after, it was the way they bookended it, where you have on the front end, you have Ross who was indeed a Skrull. And when it begs the question, like, okay, so how long has Ross been a Skrull? How long has this person been masquerading as him? Because, was it, as far as we know, the real Ross is hanging out in Wakanda after the events of Wakanda Forever. So, so did he start after the events of Wakanda Forever, or was he, or was this Skrull hanging around, prior to that? But then like as you said, the ending of having Maria Hill be the one who was a major character, get killed like that. And will this death really stick? Because, we've seen this, before with Coulson, as far as Nick's, one of his aides,
right,
getting killed. So, I'm really, if they're going to do it, don't do the Marvel, backdoor. We got some,
no takebacks. They're dead. They remain dead. We'll see. We'll see if they take it back real quick in the next episode. somehow or another. But
yeah, but like you, I wasn't. It was solid. I wasn't like blown away, like, oh, but it was a solid start. As we were talking the other night, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of worried.
yeah,
But so far, so good.
yeah. But like Will forever be the DC apologist, and I will forever be the MCU apologist. We have our loyalties,
Yeah.
I know when I'm biased about something, and I go into an MCU show thinking this is going to be really good. Sometimes I'm disappointed. Sometimes I'm not.
Yeah.
But I like it. I
Yeah.
feel like we need this kind of show. We haven't gotten it since
Hmm.
Falcon Winter Soldier, and like that ending moment just kept making me think of I think it was the third episode where you had the bloody shield
Oh
at the
yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
masterful,
Yeah.
and they played classical music just like in this one. There's something
Hmm.
so like eerie about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah. Very
But
cool.
yeah. So we got 5 weeks with Fury and Sons, Talos and Sons. And we'll see what we get by the end of it. We'll see if Will is on the train or if he got off and he's like, nope, I'm not on this train. I'm going to a different one. um,
Well, they kind of had me with Cal Bradstreet, for Mr. Robot. They got me, they piqued my interest. And so far I'm like, okay. So, so I'm also looking at it through that lens as well. Like, can I see some of those story beats and with some of the geopolitical things that we also saw in Mr. Robot? Will that kind of creep into some of the storylines here on the show?
we shall see. And on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Will M. Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and visit our website, www.cnnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.